Welcome to BaseballGuys.com. I'm your host here on Around the Horn, Ray Flowers. Big excitement in the world of fantasy baseball and the world of baseball today as we finally had some trades as we get closer and closer to that trade deadline on July 31st. The first deal I'm going to talk about is one that just came down the pipe, and it's the move of Jorge Cantu from the Marlins to the Rangers. Now, the only player in this deal that has any bearing is Jorge Cantu. Of course, the other players going back the other direction aren't relevant in 2010. So what happens to Cantu and his value? He goes from a situation where he's playing every day in Florida to a situation where he may or may not be playing every day in Texas. Now, you have to think the Rangers acquired him to play him most days. They've got Vladimir Guerrero basically as the designated hitter on most days. They've got Michael Young as a third baseman on most days, which means Jorge Cantu is probably going to have to play first base. Justin Smoak didn't hit very well for the Rangers early in the year. They've now gone to Chris Davis after the move of Smoak out of town to the Mariners. Chris Davis has struggled yet again, so it looks like Cantu will see the majority of starts at first base. He's not much better than a league average hitter. He tends to start off very quickly and then fade as the year goes on. He did that last year and he's done that again this year, but he does provide, I guess, a professional at bat and a slight upgrade over Chris Davis. Cantu's value stays about the same. He moves to a great park with a great lineup around him. Chris Davis, unfortunately, AL-only owners, looks like he just lost a lot of his value. Miguel Tejada, a player who's been really average to poor this year, much worse than we've seen from Tejada in the past. He's no longer the home run hitter we once knew, but he should still be able to drive in runs and hit you 280, and he's struggled to do that so far this year. The Orioles moved him. He goes back to the National League to join the San Diego Padres. Now, why would the Padres acquire Tejada? Well, they need to add bats to that lineup. That's clear. They have an excellent pitching staff. They have a ball yard that's tailored for pitching, but they need the hitting. Obviously, the move to the National League might hurt his production a little bit when you go into that ballpark in Petco. It's very difficult to hit in. Padres have had David Eckstein at second base, hasn't given him much at the dish. They've had Everett Cabrera, who's been awful. He's barely hitting 200 right now at shortstop. So it looks like Tejada will play a little bit of shortstop, even though his range is pretty deficient at this point defensively. He'll play some third base, moving Chase Headley to the outfield on those days. Tejada should probably be one of these guys who plays 5 times a week. He may not play every day, but he should be in the lineup most days for the San Diego Padres. The big trade, and I don't know why I went with the third, just probably to mess with you. The big trade today was the finalization of the deal of Roy Halladay from the Astros to the Phillies. Now, this is kind of a weird issue with the Phillies. You can just go ahead and say, why didn't the Phillies hold on to Cliff Lee? They went ahead and made the move to add add Roy Oswalt. Roy Oswalt's not as good a pitcher as Cliff Lee, and he will be a little bit cheaper than the big money deal Cliff Lee will sign in the offseason. But the bottom line is for the Phillies, they've now got Oswalt, Hamels, and Halladay, potentially the top 3 starters in all of baseball now, definitely the top 3 in the National League. It's going to be extremely difficult to face the Phillies club if they make the playoffs this year. Oswalt's value goes up a little bit. He's pitched very well this season, pretty much as well as he's pitched in years. He hasn't had the win-loss record that you like to see because the Astros are struggle. He should pick that up a bit with the Phillies. If the Phillies offense can ever get going, he could be a big winner. Look for him to be very effective, even though he's going to a small yard. Wasn't like he was exactly in a big one with the Astros in Houston. A player involved in that deal was Brett Wallace. Brett Wallace, well, not involved in that deal, but he was involved in a part of that deal. Anthony Goes, who was acquired in the Roy Oswalt deal, was then immediately flipped to the Blue Jays for Brett Wallace. That means 4 teams. 4 teams for Brett Wallace in a year's time. He's with the Astros now. There's been rumors that the Astros might consider moving Lance Berkman here as we approach the deadline. Berkman's probably not long for the Astros organization. Don't know if Brett Wallace is going to see any looks this season. He might spend most of the time in the minors until the month of September starts. But it looks like Wallace will finally get a chance to be an everyday player starting next season for the Astros at first base. The guy can hit. If you're in a keeper league, hold on. And in the only league, take a flyer. He might get some at-bats this season. Kerry Wood, looks like he's going to be back. He had an outing in the minor leagues through 8 pitches. Every one of them was a strike. Very solid outing for Kerry Wood. He's going to return on Friday to the Indians, and reports are at this point that he'll go right back into that closer's role. Now, the Indians probably won't be able to trade Wood before the trade deadline, but there's still the waiver period in August. They'll probably try to look to move him at that point to another club. They might have to eat some of the salary. Chris Perez has pitched wonderfully in Kerry Wood's absence. He's someone you should still hold on to. Pardon me when I get that eyelash out of my eye. Chris Perez is someone you should still hold on to in fantasy leagues. He should be the closer at some point in the very near future when Kerry Wood is eventually moved. But if you're a Kerry Wood owner, get him back in your lineup because it looks like the Indians are going to use him in the 9th inning. And then finally, another 9th inning arm, Andrew Bailey of the A's. Quietly, he's had a very good season, not quite as good as last year, but still an excellent addition to any fantasy squad. He's had some issues with his back and shoulder area of late. The team has basically shut him down for about the past week. He threw today, had a bit of a setback as far as just not being able to get that arm loose. The team's decided to place him on the disabled list, it looks like. Michael Wirtz would have to be the guy you would look at to take over the ninth inning. Wirtz himself has been involved in trade discussions, Whether the A's would move him now or not with the uncertainty of Bailey remains to be seen. If Wirtz is dealt, you might see Craig Breslov taking over the ninth inning. So if you're in an AL only league, go prospecting. Mike Wirtz, Craig Breslov can help you out in the save category. I'm Ray Flowers, BaseballGuys.com. Thanks for joining me here on Around the Horn at BaseballGuys.com. And don't forget to visit me at Twitter.com/BaseballGuys as I keep you up to date with all the breaking information as we approach the trade deadline.